There aren't very many events more momentous in American politics than when a president of the United States is shot by somebody who's trying to kill him. That, of course, is what happened last year in 2024 during the 2024 presidential campaign to President Trump. It actually happened twice where two people tried to kill him, but the one in Butler, Pennsylvania, the first one is where somebody actually shot him. And there are very few instances in American history where presidents of the United States were shot. The time before that was Ronald Reagan in the 1980s, which was 45 years earlier. And of course, the time when a president was killed, the one before that, was when John F. Kennedy had his head blown off by a person or people that were responsible for that. And many, many Americans continue to this day to believe that the true story of what happened with John F. Kennedy and his assassination has never been revealed, in part because the government acted in very deceitful ways, in ways to obfuscate the facts in order to hide the true reality from emerging. And what the FBI has done in the case of the attempted assassination on President Trump's life in Butler, Pennsylvania last year, one that came extremely close to killing him. It was just a matter of pure luck, a matter of a couple inches. It actually did kill one of his supporters who were seated behind him. It wounded pretty seriously two others. We have learned almost nothing about the person who was the shooter and who was killed on that day. So we were never able to hear from him. He was killed by Secret Service on that day. The FBI under President Biden said virtually nothing about what we know about the killer. His name is Thomas Crooks. And when the Trump administration was inaugurated, President Trump said he had directed FBI Director Kash Patel and Deputy Director Dan Bongino and Attorney General Pam Bondi to find out everything they could about this killer. And they've been in office now for 10 months, and they have told us basically nothing more than what we were told during the Biden administration, which is basically nothing. This person was 20 years old, and we were told, oh, there's very minimal online footprint. What 20-year-old has a very minimal to non-existent online footprint? And what footprint there was, we weren't told much about at all, let alone any of the other facts about what the investigation revealed. And what makes it so notable is that there are times when the FBI is justified in withholding facts about an investigation, such as the investigation that is currently taking place into the murder of Charlie Kirk, for example. And that's because the alleged accused killer, Tyler Robinson, is not dead. He's very much alive. He's in police custody. He'll presumably have a trial. There's still an ongoing investigation about whether he had accomplices or people who were in some way involved who could be criminally charged, and disclosing facts and information before that happens could jeopardize the investigation. But in the case of Thomas Crooks, none of that is true. Thomas Crooks is dead. He died on the day that he shot President Trump. And according to the FBI, this is something that Kash Patel said only recently, Thomas Crooks acted alone. There are no conspirators. He didn't work with any other individuals. He didn't work with any other groups. He didn't work with any other countries. He was just a lone wolf, somebody who just completely on his own decided to go and kill President Trump and came very close to succeeding in what looked like a pretty professional effort. The holidays will be here before you know it. When will they be here? Before you know it. And for many families, that means excitement and a little stress. Between gifts, travel, and higher prices, it's easy to feel overwhelmed, especially if you're already relying on credit cards to cover the basics. If that debt is piling up, you're not alone. If you're a homeowner, you might have considered reaching out to American Financing, but hesitated because you don't want to give up your low mortgage rate. That's why American Financing created the Smart Equity Loan, a simple, smart way to get your finances back on track without giving up your low mortgage rate. Unlike a HELOC, which can fluctuate with the market, the Smart Equity Loan offers a fixed rate, so you'll have 1 month predictable monthly payment. It lets you use your home equity to pay off high interest debt, free up your cash flow, and still keep your existing mortgage intact. There are no upfront fees. To find out if you qualify, 866-889-1994. That's 866-889-1994, or visit AmericanFinancing.net/Greenwald. We have learned some about Thomas Crooks over the last week, but not because the FBI deigned to tell us anything. We learned about it, and I talked about this on Friday because Tucker Carlson on November 14th published a 30-minute documentary entitled Who is Thomas Crooks?, where a source that Tucker worked with, who's an expert in online forensics, was able to investigate, find multiple social media accounts that clearly were used by Thomas Crooks, and was able to trace the trajectory of what seemed like he was started as, which is a very virulent, violence-oriented, far-right extremist, talking about murdering Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and killing immigrants and murdering Democrats. Lots of overt racism and anti-Semitism. And then it kind of morphed in 2020 into an anti-Trump, you could say more progressive orientation, was very critical of Trump for not doing more on COVID, and then kind of evolved politically. Why did we need Tucker Carlson to find that out? Why didn't the FBI tell us that? And then earlier today, Miranda Devine in the New York Post published a similar type of investigation. I believe, oddly, didn't mention Tucker Carlson's investigation at all, even though a lot of it overlapped. But she also added a lot of facts that weren't in Tucker's report based on a very similar kind of forensic investigation online. There you see the headline, Miranda Devine, FBI Secret Service butchered the Thomas Crooks case and invited conspiracies. We deserve the truth. And some of what she traced suggests that Thomas Crooks became involved in trans online culture or gender questioning. But we don't know. We should know. The FBI knows. The FBI has a lot of facts. And there are questions about this case that, independent of that, the FBI should answer. One of the questions Tucker raised was Thomas Crooks was online all the time threatening violence against all sorts of politicians, against all sorts of elected leaders. The FBI has programs that they paid for that are supposed to trace and identify people who are threatening violence online, to monitor them, to investigate them. Was Thomas Crooks known to the FBI or known to local law enforcement prior to his decision to go and try and murder President Trump and come very close? Did anyone try and recruit him after seeing the kinds of things he was saying online? Why can't we know whether the FBI knew of Thomas Crooks before that day or was known to local law enforcement? If he was, what did they do about it? If he wasn't, why didn't they? And I should add too, and I was on Megyn Kelly's show today for about 2 hours, and we spent maybe half the time discussing this, so I'm not going to go over all that. If you want to watch the whole thing, I encourage you to watch it. We also talked about the MAGA civil war involving Tucker and Megyn and Nick Fuentes and other related issues like that in Israel. But I think it's very important to remember that throughout 2024, there were leaks in the media suggesting in general that Iran, the Iranian government, was trying to assassinate President Trump, and that Iran specifically was likely behind one or both of these assassination attempts. And we know from recent history that when neocons and others inside the government are trying to lure the United States into a foreign war or provoke an American president to believe they have to enter the war, one of the things they do is they pin things on the country they want to attack. That's what was done with the anthrax attacks after 9/11. John McCain immediately went on David Letterman once David Letterman came back after 9/11, and he asked him about the anthrax attacks. And he said, we're pretty sure Saddam Hussein is behind that. That was leaked all over the place. When Americans were petrified of anthrax, don't worry, this is clearly Saddam Hussein. This is the type of anthrax he uses. This is how he weaponizes anthrax. And it turned out Saddam Hussein had absolutely nothing to do with that anthrax attack. It actually came from a U.S. military lab by a U.S. military scientist who was working on defensive research into anthrax, and we were told he weaponized it and sent it because he wanted to scare Americans about anthrax to fund his research more. He killed himself conveniently, so he never got to being questioned or put on trial. Lots of things got blamed on Iraq, and then got blamed on Libya, and got blamed on Assad, some of which was true, much of which wasn't. So then also the question is, who leaked that this was something that Iran was behind? Now that Kash Patel and Dan Bongino are saying, oh no, there was no one who had anything to do with it. Was any of that true? Did anyone work with him? Republican senators have been asking these questions for a year now. They want to know. It's not just Democrats. And obviously there's questions as well about people thought it was rather bizarre that there was no coverage of the Secret Service on this building. Apparently, one of the things Tucker was reported is that Thomas Crooks flew a drone for 11 minutes over the site that morning to engage in surveillance, and it just so happened to be at a time when the FBI's surveillance detection and drone detection programs were down, out of service. The more the FBI refuses to answer these questions, the more they refuse to tell us what they know. That is the soil in which conspiracy theories rightfully grow. Because when the FBI does this, when they refuse to give basic information to the American public about things we have a right to know, like who tried to kill Donald Trump and came very close to doing so, who did he work with, did the FBI know about him beforehand, what was this Iran attempt to blame Iran? When they refuse to answer those kind of questions and information just drips out in little pieces, here's a Tucker video, here's some things he found, here's what Miranda Devine found in the New York Post, people are going to start to wonder, it seems like the FBI is covering this up. And again, they don't have the excuse here that there's an ongoing investigation they don't want to impede or jeopardize because the shooter is dead and the FBI itself says there are no conspirators. So they're not investigating any conspirators. They know there were none, they said. So what excuse is there for not showing us all the things they have about Thomas Crooks, his political evolution, his motivations, his ideology, how he trained, whether anyone tried to recruit him? Was he known to law enforcement beforehand? These are totally basic and obvious questions that we have the right to know. And for some reason, someone inside the U.S. government, either Dan Bongino and Kash Patel or someone above them, although the only people really above them are Pam Bondi, theoretically, and Donald Trump, someone has decided that the public is not going to have any of this information about what this investigation reveals. Not just the public, but Republican senators who have been asking and who have been getting stonewalled. And when you combine that with other things the FBI has done, declaring, oh, there's nothing in the FBI in the Epstein files to see, he killed himself, there's no client list, there's no blackmail. And even the lack of information about the Tyler Robinson shooting of Charlie Kirk, allegedly, which, as I said, at least there they have the excuse if there's an ongoing investigation, they don't want to jeopardize. I think a lot of questions are very urgent about the FBI and the Thomas Crooks case and why there's so much stonewalling. And congratulations to both of these journalists for doing the job to the extent they could do it. But the real story has to be told by the FBI with evidence, with testimony. We shouldn't tolerate any more of this refusal to answer and this lack of cooperation, this concealment. It's very strange why Donald Trump's own officials would have an interest in preventing the American public from learning about the person who tried to kill him and came very close to doing so, and yet that's exactly what's happening. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.